There we go. Good evening, everybody. It's very good to be here. It's very good to be with all 16 of you. Let me see how many people. No, 12 of you. We are 13, including me, now 14. You all will be very welcome to this class. And we are reaching 15 people in the room at this point. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. This is the Behavioral Economics of Global Affairs, Economia Comportamental de Assuntos Globais. My name is Luis Maia, and we are already starting to look at the finish line. We are not that far. In a few weeks, we are going to be done. And we still have lots of interesting topics to discuss, starting with the topics of tonight. Tonight, not only we're going to finish the discussion about sociality, prejudice and discrimination, its relation with sociality, but we are also going to talk about this very, very powerful tool in behavior economics, ok? Então, além de a gente concluir a discussão sobre preconceito, discriminação, num contexto de socialidade, a gente vai falar um pouquinho sobre uma ferramenta muito, muito, muito poderosa da economia comportamental chamada MINDSPACE. Quando a gente fala MINDSPACE, a tradução seria espaço mental, área mental, alguma coisa assim. But don't worry, you guys will understand it in just a few more minutes. Before I start, any questions? Any doubts? Any comments? Something that we said last time? Something that you want to bring up, to bring to everybody's attention? Nope. All right, then. Okay, so let me share my screen with you one more time here. And we are going to be looking at this material, which you guys have already been receiving, right? You saw that in our Google Classroom. So what was that all about? We were talking about how we humans are social animals. Oh, that's not a big deal. We know that for a long time. But actually, what we are saying is a little bit further than what you are used to hear. Think about this. We are saying that we are group-minded animals. Think about this. It's as if we are thinking together, as if we could not help but think like the same way other people do. So I give you this example here. It's only this sort of illustration. So this guy up here, he looks at other people. He knows that those guys are being fooled by what they see. But this one here, he can understand that water is not coming from rain. So he observes that there is no use in going out with umbrellas. But no matter his knowledge, even though he knows what's going on, when he leaves the room, he also will take the umbrella. And you may look at me and say, come on, Luis, this is not rational. And yeah, it looks like it is not rational. But then again, let's always go back and think about why our brains work that way. And if you think about the way we live today, the way our societies are organized, well, it looks like it is irrational. But if you think that we are a group of individuals living in the African savannah, and we have to protect ourselves from tigers, from wild animals, and we had to split the group. Some people will search for food, some people will stay at home and protect whatever we have. Well, if you think about that environment, conformity, which means behaving exactly the way as everybody else is behaving, Well, conformity is kind of an advantage. It's a reason to survive. It's a mechanism to protect the group. So we're still carrying out this solution that may not be the more adequate, the more appropriate for nowadays, but we still are carrying those as, features of our brains, ok? Todo mundo entendeu essa explicação, gente? Pode parecer irracional se você olhar para a sociedade nos dias de hoje, mas você para e pensa lá nas dinâmicas sociais de um grupo de humanoides vivendo na savana africana, faz total sentido que a conformidade seja essa força tão incrivelmente poderosa a ponto de moldar a forma de pensar de cada um de nós. In our last class, I was giving you this example, some people, some guys these days started using skirts, and that's not most common, right? You can see some Scottish people using skirts. You can see here and there in a fashion magazine, men using skirts, but you don't see that every day. And if you stop and think about this and say, why? Why can't men use skirts? And there's absolutely no good explanation for that. I mean, it's just like a convention. And we look at someone, a guy like me using skirts, people will look at me and say, come on, what are you trying to convey? What do you want to express with that strange habit? People don't accept that. It is not usual. It is not like everybody else. So we just dislike, we don't agree, we are scared, we attack, we become aggressive. Anyway, so it's just like as if we were bound to think together and we should think the same things, right? So that's what we mean when we talk about sociality. And the question that remained from our last discussion... Opa, alguém queria fazer uma pergunta? Alguém queria fazer uma pergunta? Eu tô vendo o microfone aberto aí.
Ah, eu abri, mas você queria, professor. Não pode perguntar, não.
Ah, foi acidental, né? Tá. Let me go back here. Yeah. So we are here. All right. Let me see if you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. Yes, you still are. Let me check. Just a minute, please. Let me just make sure that you guys can see exactly the same thing that I do. Oh, yes, you can. Okay. All right, so my question is this. How sociality and conformity is associated with prejudice and discrimination? Who could help me with that? Minha pergunta é assim, pessoal, pode responder em português, inglês, alemão, francês. É assim, a gente estava falando de preconceito e discriminação. E, de repente, você pulou para essa história aí, Luiz Maia, de falar de socialidade. O que essas duas coisas têm a ver? O fato de que as pessoas pensam igual e o outro fato é que as pessoas desenvolvem preconceito, compartilham visões de mundo, de preconceito. Como é que essas duas coisas estão relacionadas? Me ajudem aí, por favor. Deixa eu ver se tem aqui alguém no chat escrevendo alguma coisa. Não? Ninguém. Não entendeu, Ana? Deixa tudo bem, eu vou te explicar de novo a pergunta, tá? No início da nossa aula, no último encontro, a gente estava falando sobre preconceito e discriminação. A gente falou sobre o papel das mulheres lá naquelas vilas na Índia. Aí depois a gente falou, e um exemplo que deu certo, né, que mudaram a imagem das mulheres, colocando as mulheres como chefia, né, como cabeça da vila, em algumas cidades e tal. Isso acabou mudando a imagem que a mulher tinha, melhorando as denúncias de abuso contra a mulher, o que a polícia fazia a partir de denúncias de abuso contra a mulher. Então, aquilo teve um efeito positivo em toda a sociedade. Aí a gente falou depois sobre um efeito que não funcionou. Tentaram consertar um pouquinho daquela política de castas. Os castas dos intocáveis, o preconceito que existe quando uma pessoa vem de uma casta inferior e tudo mais. Aí tentaram consertar com algumas políticas públicas e não deu certo. Então, a gente está falando sobre preconceito e discriminação. Eu até recomendei para vocês assistirem ao longo do final de semana, na carnaval aí, um vídeo que falava sobre um americano visitando o Brasil e tentando entender se aqui realmente era uma democracia racial. Claro que ele encontrou elementos de racismo em quase tudo que ele viu. Minha pergunta agora é assim, o que tem que haver essas duas coisas? A discussão sobre preconceito e discriminação, com essa discussão de de socialidade, em que as pessoas parecem ter uma necessidade de pensar e comportar-se de uma maneira única, de aderir ao padrão, de ser conformes umas aos outros. Do you think those two things are related or not?
Sim, porque quem tá fora do padrão sofre preconceito, né?
Exato. O ponto é exatamente esse, Clara. É que a conformidade serve para dar uma identidade a um grupo. E essa identidade do grupo, ela se fortalece na negação de quem não é do grupo. Então, se eu juntar lá e fazer um grupo dos professores que gostam de futebol americano na rural. Não, aqui agora nós somos diferentes, nós somos professores que gostam de futebol americano. Não gostamos de futebol brasileiro. Aí a gente vai e começa a criar estereótipos sobre quem é brasileiro que gosta de futebol normal. Assim, o pessoal que gosta de jogar essa bola redonda aí, eles são, na verdade, dominados pelos ingleses, eles não tiveram identidade própria. Começa a criar uma série de divisões sobre quem não faz parte do meu grupo. So, prejudice and discrimination, it is just one manifestation of this group-minded behavior, you know? We are talking about the same thing here. Sociality means that we have this tendency to think and behave as a group, but we strengthen the group's identity by excluding someone else. A gente fortalece a identidade de um grupo ao se contrapor, contrastar e não aceitar o diferente. So, yeah, these two things, they work together. And if you think about this, I mean, suppose that you were born white in a family where your parents were racists, okay? You are not a racist person, but your parents were since the beginning. Since you were very early in your childhood, you realized how your parents looked and treated people with different colors, okay? And then you don't want to be a racist. You are not a racist. You don't think like them. But you may be forced to behave like them as a influence of your parents, right? Então, dependendo da família onde você nasce, se seu pai é racista, sua mãe é racista, se seus parentes são todos racistas, é muito difícil de você desenvolver um pensamento independente e falar assim, não há nenhuma razão porque as pessoas são tão discriminatórias com quem tem uma outra cor, diferente da minha. All right, so what we are saying is that it is still sociality, but it's a way sociality works in specific groups. And that's the whole point, because prejudice and discrimination is mostly about grouping. It's about categorizing. It's about selecting comparing what you think is similar or what looks like each other and what is different. This is what the fundamental piece, the fundamental tool of prejudice is difference. It's groups of different individuals. And for some reason, they decide not accepting each other or not being able to, live alongside or to accept or to tolerate or to even love different people, right? All right, so these two things are clearly connected, and we have to pay attention to these connections if you want to overcome racism, okay? Now, let me also bring back some of the things that we said by the end of our class, okay? We said something like this. Look, from being like this, extremely social, we have some advantages as a society, and we have some disadvantages. At certain levels and some things, we will enjoy sociality as a benefit. And for some things, it may become a problem. So we want to understand that and to give you some illustrations, some examples of this, okay? All right, let me share again my screen here with you. Okay, oh yeah, there we go. So let me read this sentence. You guys will understand what I mean. Now, check this out. Our tendencies, our social tendencies, well, they mean that we are not purely selfish and wealth maximizing, as many economic models and policies assume. Now, think about this for a while. When you study microeconomics, when you started studying economics, you had like this individual, and he was trying to maximize his satisfaction, which, by the way, in economics we call utility. Utilidade, maximizando a utilidade. So, in that description of the human being, well, the only thing a person really cares, is about his own benefit, his or her own benefit, his or her own good, right? But if we start thinking like this and realize that people are this extremely social creature, then we understand that we also value reciprocity and fairness. A gente não quer só se dar bem. A gente quer ver outras pessoas se dando bem. We are willing to cooperate in the attainment of shared goals. Então, a gente tem uma tendência a cooperar quando a gente tem objetivos comuns. And we have the tendency to develop and adhere to common understandings and rules of behavior, whether or not they benefit us individually or collectively. Então, a gente tende a pensar de forma coletiva, independente de aquilo ser bom para nós ou ser ruim para nós. Now, it may sound like naive what I'm just about to say, but think about it for a while. If a person is racist, think about how much good black music this person is missing. Imagine assim, um cara branco, extremamente racista contra os negros. Agora, pensa a quantidade de música extraordinária que esse pessoal nunca vai se dar o prazer de ouvir, do jazz, do blues, das músicas afro-brasileiras aqui, dos nossos batuques, do nosso tambor. Se a pessoa é racista, ela também perde. Ela deriva um padrão de comportamento do seu grupo e ela tem prejuízos com isso também. So it's not like, yeah, we are superior, we are going to be good here. No, you're also harming the racist people's interests too. So you cannot reconcile the racist behavior with profit or welfare maximization. Não dá para conciliar a ideia de uma pessoa ser racista e ser maximizadora de utilidade. Ela está perdendo, ela está deixando de ter benefícios. So this was one thing that I wanted to bring back. The second thing is a very important message of this class, okay? There are some pieces of information and knowledge that you get from this class. There are, like especially important. And I want you guys to pay a lot of attention to this, okay? So again, check out this sentence here. A key consequence of sociality for the development of nations is that groups and even entire societies can get stuck in collective patterns of behaviors such as corruption, segregation, and civil war. Olha aqui que essa frase está falando, gente. Uma das consequências-chave da socialidade para o desenvolvimento das nações é que certos grupos e até sociedades inteiras podem ficar travadas por décadas nos mesmos padrões de comportamento, envolvendo corrupção, por exemplo, envolvendo discriminação, segregação, envolvendo guerra civil, mesmo quando todo mundo que olha de fora e fala assim, se vocês pelo menos parassem de brigar, vocês iam ver o quanto estúpido é. Now, I know that what I'm saying here looks like, at some point, shocking, but also very interesting. And I wanted to emphasize this. Think about Israel and Palestine. Think about decades of hate and killing and mass murder and poverty and pain and losing family members for decades. And the war keeps going and looks like it will never finish. Now, the reason why this war seems like unstoppable, one of the reasons is sociality. Think about this. Tô vendo com a mãozinha levantada aqui, não sei quem foi primeiro, se foi Carlane ou foi Igor. Quem gostaria de falar? Abre lá o microfone, ou então escreve para mim.
Professor, isso seria strong context ou peer pressure?
Yeah, those are like the micro level of sociality. A socialidade, essa tendência a gente aderir a padrões do nosso grupo. Mas os mecanismos pelos quais ele funciona no dia a dia, vem o strong context e vem o ethical blindness. A pessoa pode se cegar quanto ao aspecto ético de uma agressão a uma outra pessoa de outra cor. E, por sinal, Igor, se você é um cara que gosta de ciência, deixa eu fazer uma menção aqui para você. No livro do Charles Darwin, que fala das viagens dele pelo mundo, em que ele descobriu a origem das espécies, aquela história toda, no livro dele, tem um comentário de como que ele ficou chocado vendo pessoas que se diziam católicas, fervorosas, crentes a Deus, castigarem seus escravos de uma maneira tão brutal que nenhum animal ele conseguia conceber ser machucado daquela forma. E as pessoas, aquelas mesmas pessoas irem para a missa, se dizerem cristãos e tementes a Deus. Está no livro do Charles Darwin esse capítulo trágico da história do Brasil.
Caramba.
Interessante, né? Chocante, mas interessante, né? Kailane, gostaria de comentar ou fazer alguma pergunta? Eu tive a impressão de ver sua mãozinha levantada, mas... Não, né? Tá bom, foi sem querer. All right. So you see, we're talking here about some extremely important discussions, right? We're talking here about how people can become blind and participate in tremendous injustices just because they are part of a group. They can silence, they can omit, they can just, pretend it's not there because someone suffering this kind of injustice, it's not from his own group. So, I mean, when you think about these groups and how they are stuck together and how nobody will accept divergence, now this is like a recipe for disaster, uma receita para o desastre. As pessoas que se unem com esse padrão de conformidade tão absoluto, ao mesmo tempo fortalecendo a sua identidade na negação do que os outros não são como você, pode gerar um eterno atraso, uma trava. And if you think about this in Brazil, just stop for a moment and think. Brasilia, every year we approve a budget, a national budget, and that national budget has characteristics of a very, very old society. Todo ano a gente aprova um orçamento da União. E a maneira como a gente divide o dinheiro público, em alguns aspectos, tem pouca diferença do que a gente fazia há 200 anos atrás. Think about this. Think about, why do you think that judges have the right to take 60, 90 days of vacation in a year? Why do you think that we have a rule saying no one can have a salary higher than the president? But still, judges of all Brazil have salaries that are twice, even 3 times larger than the president. It's going on right now. And it's just like this 200 years ago. We are still stuck in the acceptance that some people are more citizens than others. If you or me, we go to a public hospital, and if we die in one of the corridors waiting for a doctor, it's okay. If it is a judge of the Supreme Court, this guy will take a helicopter and be flown, I don't know. He will fly to São Paulo, and he will be attended by the best physicians in the country. Just like it would happen if we were talking about Dom Pedro. Exactly like that. It would be exactly like that. So we are still stuck in this pattern of behavior, of acceptance for hundreds of years. Some little things may change a little bit, they have advanced a little bit, but if you look at the big picture, me and you, we are not citizens. We are just like, second-class citizens. We are not as important as someone who holds the post in the justice sector of our state. Juiz não é cidadão como outro qualquer. Desembargador, então, meu amigo, a lei não se aplica para ele. Ele dobra a lei, ele reescreve a lei, reinterpreta a lei cada vez que ele despacha. A lei serve a ele. E era assim há 200 anos atrás. And we accept that for hundreds of years. And it goes on. It's like a collective acceptance. So you guys understand what I'm saying, right? We are stuck. And the way we conform, together, we agree to do nothing. or to do very little about that, right? Now, those are the bad news. Now, let me bring up some good news about sociality, okay? Most of the times, people develop new public policies, and they always think like this. People will only participate if they have something to gain. Então, a gente fala assim, quando a gente desenvolve políticas públicas, a gente pensa assim, não, tem que dar algum incentivo, senão as pessoas não fazem nada. Fala assim, vem aqui, vacina seu filho, e aí a gente vai dar um pirulito para ela, ou então você vai levar 1 quilo de feijão para casa, ou então a gente não vai deixar você matricular seu filho na escola se não tiver vacina. We tend to think that people will only behave to incentives, either positive incentives or negative incentives, like penalties or something like that. But if we understand sociality, we will see that it is not so. People will also behave collectively. We just don't believe it is true. We have a hard time believing that people care about each other. So if we were to apply this knowledge that you just got to fight dengue today, what we would do, instead of saying, please check your house twice a week or something like that. Now, if we understood what people are really about, we would say, please check your neighbor's house. Please check the old lady that lives next to you. She may not have the strength or the ability to do that. Help her out. If we had a campaign like this, you wouldn't believe how much more effective that is. Então a gente está acostumado a pensar que o ser humano é egoísta, só pensa em si, só age para si. E não é verdade. Eu vou dar um monte de exemplos aqui para vocês de como que as pessoas, quando observam a oportunidade de ajudar quem está na sua rua, quem está na sua comunidade, quem está na sua associação, as pessoas ajudam. Muito mais do que a gente pensa. It is not like that. We are not that selfish. We are selfish, but not all the time, and not regarding everybody. You see? We do feel like a necessity to help, or to cooperate, or to participate, and to share with people we care about, right? So we have to bring that back to public policy. And if it is true, it should work. Right. Now, take a look at this field experiment in Zambia. You guys know what it is, a field experiment? Qual seria a tradução para field experiment? Quem que poderia me ajudar aí com essa expressão? Field experiment. Não ouvi. Alguém falou?
Seria a experiência de campo, professor? Algo desse tipo?
Exatamente. Experimento de campo. Right back in the beginning of our classes, we talked about how behavior economics sometimes depend on experiments. Little games that we play, and we ask people permission to play, and then we find out some things about human behavior. But this is a field experiment, which means you go to the field, experimento de campo. So we are talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of people participating, all right? So here you go. These guys were concerned about female not using condoms, not using protection to have sex, okay? So they wanted to promote ladies' awareness about sexually transmitted diseases, how they could avoid that, and so on. So what they did, they split the population in different groups. But they decided to work with a specific group of professionals. They worked with hairstylists and barbers. Então resolveram trabalhar com cabeleireiras e barbeiros. tentando que essas pessoas fossem os atores da política pública de informar sobre o uso de preservativo, das mulheres usarem preservativo feminino. Tem gente que nem sabe que existe preservativo feminino, mas existe preservativo feminino, e elas ou então exigirem dos seus parceiros que usem preservativo e tal. All right, so they said, okay, what are we going to do? Say, well, let's take this group here and let's give them the condoms and let's tell them that they will keep part of the sales, part of the revenues, as long as they keep informing how things are going. Tá? Então, o primeiro grupo aqui falou assim, tá aqui, ó, as camisinhas, os preservativos, e vocês vão manter 50% do valor das vendas. A gente entrega para vocês de graça e vocês devolvem só 50% do valor das vendas para nós, o resto fica para vocês. All right, so that was group 1. The next group, they said, okay, now with you, we're going to do something different. We're going to say, all right, we're going to give you the preservatives, the condoms, but you're going to keep only 20% of the sales. Você, ó, seu incentivo econômico é um pouco menor. Vai receber só 20% do valor das... Claro que um grupo não sabe do outro, tá, gente? But then again, they were kind of measuring how much greed was there in such a behavior, okay? So they gave the condoms and they told, all right, hairstylists, barbers, as long as you guys sell those, you can keep 20% of the revenues, okay? Vocês podem ficar com 20% do valor das vendas. And for the third group, they said, you're not going to get money. We are going to have this accounting of how many you sell, how many condoms you sold, and after a while, we're going to rank people, and we're going to give them like, just a piece of paper saying, thank you, you were the champion or something like that. So there was like a social recognition of the person who did the best in selling and convincing people to use preservatives, okay? Now, I don't know if you understood, but we have 3 groups. No primeiro grupo, 50% das vendas ficava com as cabeleireiras. No segundo grupo, 20% do valor das vendas ficava com as cabeleireiras. No terceiro grupo, o valor nenhum ficava com as cabeleireiras, elas apenas iam aparecer numa lista que ia ser publicada lá, um outdoor, mostrando quem que mais cooperou para o uso de preservativo entre as mulheres. So it was just the social recognition, the social status of the person who helped the most. Now, my question is obvious, right? Which group did best? Qual grupo que vocês acham que saiu melhor?
O terceiro.
Exatamente, o terceiro. Eu falo assim, as pessoas, claro que elas têm motivação com grana. É claro que aquelas pessoas que você ofereceu 50% em vez de 20% das vendas, venderam um pouquinho a mais. De 20% para 50%, a diferença foi mínima, assim, um pouquinho melhor do que o de 20%. Mas as pessoas que vocês deram reconhecimento social, venderam e alcançaram resultados muito melhores. So, we not only care about other people, but we care about what people think of us. This is a very important message, If you give people reason to believe that they will be appreciated in their communities, in their groups, in their streets, in their, they will respond. If they believe they will be appreciated by someone else. We care about what people think of us, and we care a lot. Some people only care about that. And that's even a problem, by the way. But some people only care about what other people think of them, which is terrible, right? But yet, there are people like that. We all care about what other people think of us. But some of us are just obsessed with that. Then we have to be careful. But You guys got the message, right? All right. Let me give you another piece of evidence about this sociality and how it plays an important role in our behaviors, okay? Now, let me explain to you what is this game that they're playing here. We're talking about like the game of fairness, the game of, I don't know, egalitarian choices or something like this. So I will explain first in English, then I will explain again in Portuguese. So suppose that I come here and I ask you, let me see, Anna, I ask you, hey Anna, here's a game. I have 100 reais here and I'm gonna split 50 for you and 50 for someone else that you choose. You can pick anyone else from the class and then I'm gonna give 50 reais for him too. But before we do so, let me see. You have a choice, you know, I changed my mind. You have a choice. I can give 100 reais for you, or I can split the money with someone else. So it is your choice. What do you say? Então o jogo é esse. O jogo fala assim, olha, você tem a opção. Ou você pega o dinheiro para você, ou você compartilha o dinheiro com alguém. Tá aqui, 2 notas de 50. E inicialmente eu ia dar 50 para cada uma das pessoas, mas não sei, eu resolvi confiar em você, Ana. O que você acha? Você fica com 100 ou você vai dividir com 50? All right, so this is the game, all right? Now, this game has been played all over the world in hypothetical cases, sometimes with actual money, sometimes with no money whatsoever. But then again, this is the game. We just check on how people will think about others. Obviously, this game will have completely different results if the choice that Anna is supposed to make is publicly known, right? Se todo mundo souber que eu estou oferecendo essa escolha para Ana, talvez ela fique com vergonha de dizer assim, Luiz, eu vou ficar com 100. Ela fala, não, eu vou dividir, Luiz, tá certo, vou dividir 50 para mim e 50 para a Érica, que está aqui pertinho de mim e tal. You see, if I give the choice only to Anna and I don't tell anyone else, she may come and say, look, Luis, actually, I need this money, so I'm going to keep it. But if it is like public, everybody knows, well, it's going to be hard for her to not split, not share the money with someone else, right? A pessoa vai ficar constrangida de ficar com todo o dinheiro. All right, so we have like variations of this game, but it doesn't matter. Let's take just the simple version of this game, okay? Suppose that I gave Anna this option and nobody knows. All right, so this is the simplest version of the game. Okay, so what can I see in these diagrams there? So this one on the right-hand side here, this one are the results for a country called Georgia, which is just near Russia, right? So these guys decided to give the people the choice, but they had like 2 different groups. On one hand, you had people in groups, people that were exposed to the war. And on the other hand, we had people who were not exposed to war. So just go back here, sorry. Let's just clean this thing up here because it is, okay. So what you have here is people who were not exposed by war. Então, são pessoas que ou nasceram depois do final da Guerra da Geórgia, ou que mesmo durante a guerra elas saíram do país, ou não viviam nos lugares bombardeados e tal. And here you have the people who were exposed to war. Então, aqui, pessoas que tiveram suas casas destruídas, pessoas que lutaram na própria guerra. Então, we want to ask how the exposure to violence may change people's behavior, okay? Now, check this out. If you offer people, just take the ones who were not participating in the war, okay? Who were not exposed to war. So you ask them, all right, do you want to split the money or not? So in this case, there was no difference in how many people did split the money, considering that they were splitting the money with someone they knew or someone they never knew. Então, quando eles comparavam o comportamento dessas pessoas, fazendo a escolha em aceitar compartilhar o dinheiro, essas pessoas que não foram afetadas pela guerra, não interessava se o compartilhamento de dinheiro seria com algum amigo, amiga, ou parente, ou vizinho, ou seria com alguém que ela nunca viu na vida. Não tinha quase nenhuma diferença. Perguntava a pessoa assim, você compartilharia o dinheiro? A pessoa, sim. Assim, mas eu estou perguntando se fosse alguém da sua rua, que você conhece. Você, sim, eu compartilharia. Aí uma outra fala assim, e se fosse alguém que você não conhece? As mesmas respostas foram dadas. Não interessava se você estava compartilhando com uma pessoa do seu grupo ou fora do seu grupo. When they got to the people who were exposed to war, there was this huge difference. The ones who decided to share the money with people from their streets, from their family, and from their, friendship relation, it was much more frequent. Se você perguntava para as pessoas se elas estariam dispostas a compartilhar o dinheiro com alguém da sua família, com alguém da sua rua ou da sua comunidade, quase 75% das pessoas estavam dispostas a compartilhar. Quer dizer que a violência fez essas pessoas ficarem mais solidárias com quem faz parte do grupo delas. What about people who were not part of their group? Wow, then the sharing went down. The solidarity went down. Então, uma vez expostas à violência, as pessoas tendem a ficar mais solidárias com quem faz parte do seu grupo e menos solidárias com quem não faz parte do seu grupo. Now, when you look at this, you may very well look at me and say, come on, Luis, yes, this is interesting, but it's something like a war zone. It is not relevant for our days, right? Well, then let me ask you this. Don't you think that the pandemic was traumatic as a war? Vocês não acham que a pandemia foi tão traumática como uma guerra? If that is true, then we could observe the same kind of behavior after the pandemic. Será que depois das pandemias, as pessoas ficaram mais solidárias com quem faz parte do seu grupo e mais agressivas ou menos solidárias com quem não faz parte do seu grupo? What do you think, guys? Do you think this is possible?
Acho muito possível, professor, porque teve até um estudo que saiu que as pessoas elas estavam mais intolerantes com pessoas de fora, tipo vizinhos que moravam em blocos diferentes, pessoal que do trabalho, mais conflitos por pequenas causas no meio da rua. Foi constatado que isso aumentou, né?
Yeah, exactly, Anna. And this is bigger, much bigger than you think. Just think of the word polarization. Think about how easily we hate each other these days. You know, like you are Bolsonaro, I am Lula, and we hate each other. Oh, I'm not that much Bolsonaro, and you're not that much Lula, but then again, no, that's a Bolsonarista. No, that's a petista. You see, we've been through a trauma and we became just like these guys, more lenient, more tolerant, more empathic to people who are part of our groups, and we became less tolerant, less empathic, less capable of solidarity with people from outside groups. So we are more violent. We are a more egotistical society after a trauma. This is part of what we live these days. And if you think about people who live in different areas of a city, people who live in violent places are more likely to behave like this. And people who live in more protected, more secured areas of a city will behave on the other way. So don't you think this is a very important piece of information for us to develop good public policies? Essas coisas deveriam ser discutidas para todo mundo que está pensando numa política pública de saúde, numa política pública de atendimento jurídico para famílias que não têm dinheiro para pagar advogado, para, enfim, qualquer tipo de política de saúde, de política pública. Educação, saneamento básico, tudo isso a gente deveria introduzir esse conhecimento para desenvolver melhores políticas. And unfortunately not. What we do, we still believe that people will only react to their egotistical tendencies. We don't realize that the human behavior is more complex and more socially interconnected, as we're just seeing right now. Okay? All right. Okay, so those are interesting experiments. They were conducted in different places all over the world. And what we observed is that it is very much common that we have, as a general behavior, people being conditional cooperators. Most of us will tend to split, to share the money with people, and we do so as much as we think they are part of our group. But we do split the money. It's very unlikely that we will decide to keep the money just for ourselves. And think about this. The standard economic model would predict that 100% of the people would take the money for themselves. And what we see in countries like Colombia, Vietnam, Switzerland, United States, Japan, what we see all over is that the number of the people who decide to share, to split the money with someone else, is always bigger than people who just want to take the money for themselves. It may be because we think about others, thinks of us. It may be for many reasons, but that's the truth. So we are not that egotistical. Now, let me stop now and ask you a very honest question here. I want your answers as frank as possible. How many of you have had the time to watch this video? Can prejudice ever be a good thing? By Paul Bloom. Not many of you, to say the least. All right, so we're not going to see it right now. I want to talk about something else, but I will give you another chance to take a look at this video, okay, guys? The address is down here. You can check here the address for it. You can verify. Oh, wait. You can verify here the electronic address for this thing, or you can just search for this title in your search engine and you're gonna find it. It's a very good video, and it provokes you to think about how prejudice and discrimination come from a very simple logic in the way people think. And we still have to work very hard if you want to prevent people from creating huge injustices, just not paying attention to simple features of our minds, okay? All right, what I wanted to discuss with you guys today, before we finish this class, is about this thing called MINDSPACE. So let me give you an introduction to you about this thing, okay? So what we see here is like a special service to the British government. So they created this agency to analyze and to improve public policy from a behavior perspective. Então, gente, lá no Reino Unido, foi criado uma espécie de um gabinete diretamente ligado ao primeiro-ministro, e que a função desse gabinete de especialistas era estudar as políticas públicas do Reino Unido e pensar em que medida que elas poderiam ser mais eficazes se a gente levasse em conta tudo que a neurociência e a economia comportamental têm estudado nos últimos 60 anos. So it was like a revision, right? Let's take a look at the policies and let's see which of those can be improved and which of those who are already very good. So they created this behavioral insight team, o time de insights comportamentais. What were the objectives of these guys? Well, first, making public services more cost-effective and easier for citizens to use. All right. Então, eu quero que eles sejam mais baratos, sejam mais efetivos para cada dinheiro gasto, né? Cost effectiveness, custo-efetividade, né? Que fosse melhor a relação custo-efetividade, e que fossem mais fáceis para os cidadãos alcançarem. All right, so that was the main objective, the first one. The second one, improving outcomes by introducing a more realistic model of human behavior to policy. Então, melhorar os resultados ao perceber ou adotar um pressuposto mais realista de qual que é o comportamento humano. And finally, enabling people to make better choices for themselves. All right, so this is important stuff. They want to give people autonomy. They don't want to make choices for people, right? All right, so they set out to look at these possibilities of improvement, and they came out with a number of them. They coined the term MINDSPACE because each of those letters here, M, I, N, D, each of those letters have a special meaning, and they express an opportunity to improve a public policy, okay? So let's take a look at each of those. So you can see here, M for MINDSPACE and for messenger, I for incentives, N for norms. Can you see that all these letters here will form the word MINDSPACE? All right. So the first one, messenger, M for messenger. We are heavily influenced by who communicates information. So if I want to launch a program and I invite someone that people hate to announce that product or their project, well, it's not going to happen, right? On the other hand, if I invite someone like Ayrton Senna or someone that we admire, like, I don't know, the Pope, or, I don't know, important soccer player, well, Some ago, soccer players were heroes in Brazil. Now we don't we don't really trust them. They are not anymore. They lost their good image, many of them, right? But then again, so you have to pay attention if you are conducting a policy. You have to pay attention on the messenger. Choosing the best messenger may make a huge difference on how people take in the information. Então, dependendo de quem dá a notícia, a gente acredita ou não acredita. It's funny that sometimes you see people like Lula announcing some sort of policy, some sort of project, and people are, all ecstatic and they are applauding. Yeah, Lula is great and everything. But then someone comes and say, you know what? That policy was not created by Lula. He's just the guy who is launching it. In fact, that policy was created by Bolsonaro. Sometimes these things happen. And you know what? People don't care. They say, if it was Lula, it was good. It doesn't matter if the idea was from Bolsonaro. They just pay attention on the messenger. And the same thing works on the other way too, right? Some of the things that were launched in Bolsonaro's government, it was not from his government. For example, Reforma da Previdência, it was not generated by his team. It was not created by his team, but it was approved. And people said, oh, that's a huge victory of Bolsonaro. So anyway, the messenger matters, all right? The second one, incentives. Yeah, we cannot ignore that. Now, check this out. By understanding behavior economics and by studying people's behavior, we are not saying that people become stupid concerning economic decisions. We still make count, we still calculate benefits. If we give a prize or if you threaten someone with a penalty, well, we still work on that, right? We still react to that. So yeah, incentives are a good part of public policy. We always have to think about incentives. Both traditional public policies and newer ones have to think about incentives. But the newer ones have to think about incentives that are fair. They are, respectful, ethical, or something like that, okay? We have talked about ethical aspects of behavior before, right? You guys remember that. Now, letter N for norms. Here, guys, when you say the word norms, we are not talking about rules, okay? We are not talking about laws. We're talking here about taboo. We're talking here about consensus that sometimes we don't even talk about. A gente está falando de normas sociais, coisas que são consenso entre toda a população, mesmo muitas vezes sem nem discutir. So let me give you an example. Suppose that I'm going to launch this new vaccination campaign and I decide to do it on the date that will be the final match of the soccer championship. Eu coloco o lançamento da campanha de vacinação no mesmo dia que é a final do Campeonato Brasileiro. It's not going to work. People will be watching that game. Even people who don't like soccer may watch that game just because it's the finals and things like this. So you have to pay attention to the norms, right? You have to pay attention to how people think and behave, collectively in a tacit agreement whenever we want to introduce some difference, some policy, some project, okay? Pay attention to how people behave and how they think and how they organize themselves before you try to intervene, okay? The fourth element for letter D here is default. Now, this word here, default, in Portuguese, could be translated as escolha padrão. Escolha padronizada. You know, when you go to McDonald's and you see, or I don't know, any fast food, and you see there combo number 1, combo number 2, and they always get a soda, a sandwich, some French fries or something like that, right? So this is like a pre-established option, right? So people also tend to accept those. Se você estabelecer escolhas padrões, as pessoas tendem a adotá-las. The most famous example that we have already discussed in this class is about organ donation. Remember that, guys? In the beginning of the class, we were saying that Germany and Austria, they are very similar countries in the sense of the language they speak. They have a common history. Many of the families, have lived in both countries. They have the same culture. But in one of the countries, if you are born and you say nothing, you are organ donor. On the other one, if you say nothing, you are not organ donor. Então, você só é um doador de órgão em um desses países se você for lá e fizer a opção por ser. No outro país, você nasce doador de órgão. E se você quiser não ser, você precisa ir lá e marcar a opção de não ser. Now, you just changed the standard. The choice is going to be made as soon as you get your driver's license. Na hora que você vai tirar a sua carteira de habilitação, você marca essa opção lá. But just because they changed the standard, people would not change. Então, se a escolha padrão é ser doador, muita gente fica constrangida de deixar de ser. Poxa, está todo mundo sendo, então também deveria ser doador. So yeah, defaults, they do work and they can help a lot. They can help the entire society if we establish defaults that we will help them make better choices, right? Now, the letter S here stands for salience, which means highlighting some piece of information. If you draw people's attention to a specific point, they will take that into consideration, okay? Now, priming is something that I don't like too much, but yeah, it works too. Priming means when you subconsciously try to help people making better choices. But then again, the ethical thing here, it's kind of blurred, right? I mean, I don't like the idea of giving people subconscious cues, right? Então, eu coloco uma musiquinha mais suave na hora que eu vou te oferecer um programa. Yeah, this is maybe close and too close to manipulation, I don't like that too much. But yeah, sometimes it helps, and we will improve policy effectiveness. Now, affect here, this is emotion. It means the heart plays a role in people's behavior. So yes, we can somehow help people realizing the good feeling that they would get if they participated in certain action, in certain public policy, right? Then we have commitment, which means people feel embarrassed if they agree to do something and then they don't, or if they feel that some favor was made for him or for her and he was supposed to reciprocate. Well, we tend to do that. We'd like to be consistent. We like to be committed and be true to our word, So yeah, if you hold people's commitments and say, look, it was your choice. Are you coming to help us here or something like that? They will come, okay? And finally, ego. Yeah, we do have vanity. We are human beings. So yes, we can use that and give people reasons to behave in a way that will help society in general. So we can tell people that they should be proud if they recycle. We can explore that feeling of proudness when people recycle most of their residuals or something like that. All right? All right, so each of those messenger, incentives, norms, default, salience, priming, affect, commitments, and ego. Each of those things can be used to analyze a specific public policy and improve it somehow. Now, you may look at this and say, oh, come on, Luis, this is the first time I see such a thing. I had never heard about it. But yeah, it is interesting. And I'm going to show to you that this is not true. You have heard about these things, or at least you have seen those things working. You just don't realize it yet, okay? So I will give you a question, and I want you guys to look at these elements there and see if you can find some of those elements at play, okay? So let me give you the first example. I want you to think for a moment about what Bolsa Família is. Todo mundo sabe o que é o programa Bolsa Família, né? Bolsa Família, se você faz parte de um cadastro, tem uma renda média na sua casa abaixo de certo valor, mantém seus filhos na escola, mantém com frequência e tal, você ganha lá aquele cartãozinho e uma vez por mês cai um dinheiro lá na conta e você pode sacar aquele dinheiro. All right. So take a look at those elements and help me out understanding here what is present there. Num programa como Bolsa Família, qual desses elementos aqui que estão presentes? Mensageiro. O Bolsa Família tem alguém que é o mensageiro do Bolsa Família, foi o criador do Bolsa Família, é o mais vinculado ao Bolsa Família? Sim, tem. A maior parte das pessoas atribui o Bolsa Família ao Lula. Na verdade, ele foi criado um pouco antes, foi criado lá no governo Fernando Henrique, unificação de várias bolsas. Mas tem gente que fala assim, não, aquilo já existia ainda antes do governo do Cristóvão Buarque, lá no Distrito Federal. Não, existia uma experiência anterior lá no México de fazer isso. Tal. Seja como for, no caso do Lula, influencia, né? Muita gente atribui a ele, e o fato de ser um trabalhador, alguém que já foi pobre, alguém que já passou fome, aquilo influencia a análise que a gente faz da política. Diga lá, Samuel.
Pessoal, eu acho que referente ao Bolsa Família, os últimos, os quatro não. Os 5 últimos eu acho que não se aplicariam. Acho que os que se aplicariam seriam os 4 primeiros.
Muito bom ponto, Samuel, mas vamos lá. O Messenger a gente já falou. Incentives, onde é que estão os incentivos aí no jogo do Bolsa Família?
De manter os filhos na escola e tal.
Exato. Se você quiser continuar recebendo, você tem que manter os filhos na escola. Tinha uma época que se verificava até se a carteirinha de vacinação estava completa, tá? Mas depois essa história foi ficando mais só a frequência dos alunos na escola. Tá, e as normas, né? Digamos assim, os comportamentos sociais, os tabus, os padrões sociais. Como que você acha, Samuel, que está relacionado com o Bolsa Família?
Acho que as normas seriam basicamente o enquadramento, né? Tipo, um vizinho seu tem, vai lá fazer o cadastro e tal, você tem direito e tal. Então, acaba criando aí um pensamento quase manada, né? Se a gente for atribuir a outros conceitos. Até.
Exatamente. Aquilo ali foi feito para nós mesmo, você tem que ir lá também, que você tem direito. Boa. Tá, e default, que é a escolha padrão? Eu não vejo default no escolha, não vejo uma escolha padrão no Bolsa Família, não. Como é que você viu isso aí, Samuel? Só por curiosidade.
Tipo, eu acho que muitas vezes pela falta de opção mesmo, sabe? Tipo, o famoso comodismo, né?
Uhum.
Eu não preciso. E isso é o que acontece, né? É um problema. Porque muitas pessoas acabam associando o Bolsa Família a uma situação de comodismo. Né?
Uhum.
Então, acaba entrando nesse contexto aí. Ao meu
Tudo
ver.
bem. Tudo bem. Não é exatamente a ideia do default, não, que o default é como se falasse assim, faça uma escolha aqui e a gente já te dá mais ou menos encaminhada qual a escolha que você vai fazer. Então, não seria bem nesse caso, não. Mas eu quero ver se o resto da turma concorda com a sua opinião, que foi legal você ter falado, Samuel, mas que não tem esses outros 4 elementos finais, não tem no Bolsa Família. Não tem ego no Bolsa Família, não tem afeto na escolha do Bolsa Família. Saliência, né, de chamar atenção para alguma coisa. Gente, olha só. Chamar atenção para alguma coisa, dar saliência e associar com afeto. O programa, Samuel, se chama Bolsa Família. Quando eu estou falando isso, eu estou dizendo assim, eu não estou te dando dinheiro de esmola. Eu não estou dando dinheiro para você gastar com cachaça. Eu não estou dando dinheiro para você, eu estou dando dinheiro para você manter a sua família. E a maior parte das vezes eu dou para a mãe. É a mãe que recebe o Bolsa Família. Então, aqui tem afeto. Quando você chama o programa, o Bolsa, poderia chamar assim, Bolsa Residência Familiar. Bolsa Sustento dos parentes. Bolsa Sustento dos filhos. Mas o nome Bolsa Família já associa com afeto, já associa com o fato de como gastar aquele dinheiro. Uhum. Can you see, Samuel?
Eu não entendi em relação ao ego.
Ah, não. Ego realmente não tem. Ego só se você falasse assim, eu sou uma mãe que cuida da minha família. Eu recebo Bolsa Família e uso o dinheiro todinho com os meus filhos, e eu tenho orgulho disso, eu sou uma mãe do Bolsa Família, entendeu? Alguma coisa assim, mas, de fato, aí ficaria forçada a barra um pouco. All right, guys. Tell me what you think about this. Acharam legal essa história? Now, before I finish, let me just give you a hint, guys. Please look at this, each of those elements, and the group of elements here, the set of elements, which we call MINDSPACE. And please think of this as some sort of checklist. Na hora de você lançar uma política pública, você faz a pergunta: quem que vai ser um mensageiro? Quem que a gente quer associar a imagem com esse projeto? Aí depois a gente fala, incentivos. O que o cidadão tem a ganhar? Deixa eu mostrar para ele que ele está ganhando. De que maneira que eu posso oferecer isso para ele? Fica fácil ele perceber que é uma vantagem para ele. Vou dar saliência para aquilo. Eu vou dar... Então, cada um desses elementos é como se fosse um checklist, uma checagem. Antes de lançar um programa, antes de lançar um projeto de política pública, verifique se tem como fazê-lo ser mais eficaz. Now, the good news is that this thing has been applied all over the world, and it's been working very well. We have reports from Australia, from the United States, from places like Brazil, Africa, Europe, all over the world. You can apply those principles and you can improve a lot how people respond to policies. All right? All right. Any questions before we stop? Any comments? Any suggestions? Marcos, Diego, Clara, Juan, alguma pergunta?
Não, professor, não.
All right. Valeu, pessoal. Então é isso. Good evening, everybody.
Valeu, pessoal. Tchau,
See
tchau.
you next time on Wednesday.
Good evening, professor.
Valeu, valeu, Juan.
Good night.
Good night. Take it easy, Clara. Bye, bye.
Tchau, tchau, professor. Boa noite.
Valeu, Samuel. Tchau, tchau.